And the more I tried to like argue for atheism, I found more errors in the logic of atheism, if that makes sense. And that kind of opened up the exploration that I had after.
Know like why I'm here.
An atheist at the beginning of the year
bounces into the ceiling in the passenger seat.
Hit my head.
Putting them in towards the wrong thing. Like,
Who am I now?
The person ahead of me wishing I looked like them. Somebody's looking at me wishing they looked like
Just dance. Sin's there and I'm like, man, I feel good. Never felt that.
Mia Dorren, welcome to the Filled podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
This is so
This
fun.
is new.
This
It's good.
I love this. Mia's a complete ghost on social media, fun fact.
Yeah.
So
Won't find me.
you
on
won't find
there.
her anywhere. But she is one of those interesting people that I know.
Oh,
She is a former atheist. Where have you been? And you're
Where have I been? What
like,
do you mean? You gotta be more
atheist,
specific.
agnostic.
Yeah, I think I covered like all of the bases. I was very, very atheist, devoutly so. And then I transitioned to agnosticism and then eventually Christianity, but it was a long journey to get there, so.
Guys, I met Mia in college and you were about a week into your faith journey.
No, literally, yeah.
Like being a Christian.
Yeah, probably. That sounds right. Because I never thought I would ever go to Wheaton College because I hated everything about it. And then I converted and I felt very strongly that I was supposed to go there. And I applied, I think, like 3 days before school started. I hadn't shown any interest in it at all. And then they called me and I told them my story. And
Like, hey guys.
yeah, and they let me in. So I was on campus the next week. Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
insane. But also like the Lord. So
Yeah.
won't he do it?
Honestly, the only reason I thought it was God is because it would never come from me. That was so I told my mom. I was like, "Well, I think
your
I'm
mom's
supposed to do this."
And now your mom's like a prof there.
yeah, she is. She followed me.
She followed you. You planted the seed.
I did.
So that's where I met Mia, everyone. We met in college, and she has an insane story. Let me just tell you. But she's also very knowledgeable because she has explored all of the religions that you can think of. That's
Well,
so
that's very
wrong.
gracious. I have a lot to learn, but I try.
We've had many conversations, and this is probably just a conversation where we're just adding a microphone and a camera to it because we have so many like conversations like this all the time.
They're my favorite. I love them.
And fun fact, she lives in California now, so she's in from California, and we're in the Chicagoland area. So
Yes,
she's
I
here.
do.
She came all the way here for this. I'm just kidding.
I would though. I would have if you wanted me.
Well, I did want you.
Okay.
Because I also know
Appreciate
that
it.
there's so much to talk about. And even like
Yeah.
what you're doing now. Guys, she's writing a book. We literally have so many things to talk about. Testimony, book, other hot takes. Because she's got a lot about society, let me tell you.
I don't really have a filter, so Abby has already agreed that if I say something accidentally that I should not air, she will edit it out.
I will
so.
edit it out because we are here for clean content and a culture revolution. But she's doing research on our generation, Gen Z, right now for her, for her book. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about that. Let's talk about the atheism to agnosticism to how you got there because I find it so interesting. I love, after talking to people in apologetics, I'm loving learning about like Mormonism and Islam and how they're wrong. Which might be a hot take, but even we were just talking about how in
But
today's
it
society,
shouldn't be a hot take.
it shouldn't be. It literally
In
should
my
not
opinion. I don't get it. Yeah.
be. We were just talking about in society today how low-key we're just soft in the way of as like Christians and being like, okay, yeah, sure, like speak your truth, girl. No.
Yeah, this whole language of my truth is slipped into Christian culture just as it has secular, and it's, I mean, no one lives that way. That's the thing, is like we can go around and be like, oh yeah, sure, everything's possible, everything's equally valid, but at the end of the day, like, you're gonna get mad if someone does something wrong. And you're gonna act as though gravity exists, and you're gonna claim science and all these things, and yeah, it's just fascinating that we don't. There's a disconnect there for sure.
There's a massive disconnect
Yeah.
there because I feel like we live in a culture where we're pushovers,
Yeah,
like straight up.
but at the same time, you can't push over the fact that they're pushovers. If that makes sense, like you can't push them to the other side. They're very firm.
Are we talking about atheists currently?
No, just people. I mean,
Or
just
social
anyone who uses that language, I would say it's very hard to get them to a place where they recognize the contradiction. Yeah, they're very confident about their stance, which is, of course, if you're like, well, there's no truth, then how can you say that it's true? You can't make a truth claim.
No.
Can't do it. Your options are limited.
Can't be doing that. So I think that honestly is a fabulous place to start, because you are someone who came from, how many people were shoving Christianity down your throat when you were an atheist?
Oh, like everyone I talked to, pretty much. Well, not everyone I talked to, because obviously I explored other communities, but I went to a Christian high school, and obviously this is kind of a Bible Belt suburb that we're in. So yeah, it was definitely controversial for me to try and push everyone to question their faith, which was ultimately what I wanted. But I mean, I've always been that way. Like, I don't really care if it makes people uncomfortable. If it needs to be done, it needs to be done, and that's what I thought. So,
and in that, did pushing people to try to question their faith make you find Christianity?
I would say ultimately yes, especially like teachers, because as I said, I went to a Christian high school, and I took doctrine because we were all required to do that, and I read the entire Bible in like a week, and I wrote down every question that I had as I was reading it and gave it to my teacher, and I was like, if you can answer all of these, then like we can talk, like I'll be open to it. And he was very patient with me. I came by like every day after school with a new argument to start. And yeah, and I think having those people that did take the time and had the knowledge to push me even just kind of shattered my stereotype that Christians were all stupid and dumb, and like that's what I thought. I thought it was a coping mechanism for people who like couldn't handle reality. And yeah, so I think as I interacted more with people who actually were intelligent and had their own process, and yeah, just kind of widened my vision a bit, and then that got me deeper into the questions. And the more I tried to like argue for atheism, I found more errors in the logic of atheism, if that makes sense. And that kind of opened up the exploration that I had after.
The can of worms?
Yeah, because I was like, well, this isn't satisfying either. So I had to keep looking, and ultimately it led me to Christianity.
For the atheists that have the view that Christians are idiots and they just want something to help them cope with life, what would you say to them?
I would say some of them are. Honestly, like I mean, obviously there are exceptions to every rule. There's going to be good representatives and bad representatives, but that is a very superficial, I would say, like superficial representation of faith. And there are 100% Christians who are very intelligent, who have explored a lot of different religions, who have an edge to them, who are not afraid, to engage in the hard questions. So I would say, those are the people you would want to talk to, because it's also kind of not going to make your position stronger to just talk to the people who don't know what they're talking about. Like, if you really believe this and you want to like strengthen your worldview, go to the strongest counter argument you can possibly find. And that's like where you'll find the most challenge, I think.
I will say, having Mia in my life, everyone, has made me not question my faith more, but become more intelligent about the faith.
Oh.
Because I do think, to an extent, I am someone that walks by faith, not by sight. Like, I could never see a miracle. I could never see any facts. I'm like, I know Jesus is real and the gospel is true. But that doesn't help us with the argument against atheism or agnosticism or Islam or Mormonism. That doesn't help us. Because I can only make more Christians more Christian then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I obviously think the value of experience is unmatched in a way. Like, ultimately, what drives people typically to converting is suffering or is, an encounter with Christ. And those shouldn't be diminished by any means. But I also think that as Christians, there is a level of discipline in our faith that I think is lacking nowadays. I think like Catholicism has elements of it. They're much more ritualistic and they take the sacrament seriously and, participate in that way. But I do think there's a tendency to just kind of be, kind of not, I don't want to say lazy, but a little bit. Like, I don't know. I just think it takes effort to find truth. And just because you found Jesus doesn't mean you stop trying to get to know him, if that makes sense.
Totally.
And it takes intention and effort, I think, to do that.
Mm-hmm. And would you say the intention behind that is to then become more intellectual about your faith, to learn more about where it comes from?
I think this is honestly something I've been thinking about a lot. I don't have a clear stance on it yet because obviously people are wired differently and they all bring different things to the church. So not everyone's going to be a theologian or an academic, and that's perfectly fine. But I do wonder if there is an action, like a level of curiosity or effort that's a byproduct of pursuit, if that makes sense. Like anyone who's truly trying to understand scripture, for example, it's very easy to like Google what's the context of this book and read it in 30 seconds, and that might help you. It might not, you don't have to know Hebrew to do that, but that's a very easy way, I think, to at least be a little bit intentional about like, okay, my interpretation isn't necessarily the right one all the time. So I think maybe it's more just like a posture of humility as we're reading the scripture and talking about, what we believe and why we believe it. I think that's universally important, not just for people who are intellectual in general.
As someone who leans more intellectual, what is your argument to the atheist? If you're talking to an atheist, say I'm asking like absurd questions, like, or even I just say Jesus isn't real, prove it to me.
Well, okay. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to convince them through an argument, but I can do it. I mean, there's literally more evidence for Jesus as a historical figure that both secular and religious academics recognize than Napoleon at Waterloo or like George Washington, like all these things that we take as history and self-evident, and we accept that because we're like, yeah, there's enough evidence to believe it. There's way more evidence of Jesus and corroborating documents of the Bible and the miracles, and I mean, his body was gone, so it wasn't in the tomb. Like that's recognized pretty much unanimously.
Yeah, I guess I've never thought about it that way.
So that's you gotta just kind of deal with that. Like,
it's like, where does body go? Someone stole it?
Like, that's the thing, is kind of, it's not that you have to be certain. It's more a game of probability at that point, where it's like, sure, you can say that, of course, a resurrection is like, what? That sounds insane and crazy, and I understand that. But at the same time, when you start getting into all these other explanations, they're kind of equally weird. Like, there's the one of group hallucinations, where everyone just hallucinated Jesus at the same time, but in different places. We've never seen anything like that. If you have, let me know. I would love to study that.
Hit her up.
Yeah, that would be news to me. But yeah, there's just a lot of different avenues you could take it and arguments for God's existence. And then at that point, you kind of start whittling down of like, okay, if there is a God or something universal, what kind is he? Which religion has the most historical backing? What's consistent? I mean, there's so many different avenues to discover the existence of God. And ultimately, I think Christianity is the logical end of that. Obviously, I respect people of other religions. I don't assume that they're ill-intended or that they're stupid or anything like that. But that's just ultimately what I found to be true.
Because you also looked into Islam, Mormonism, Hinduism.
Yeah.
Witchcraft.
Which isn't, I don't know if that's a religion, but, other spiritual
that would argue
avenues.
Just the universe existed, right?
Yeah.
Witchcraft would.
Yeah.
What was your experience with that? Because I know that you also experienced in Wheaton, there's something called the Theosophical Society.
Yes.
No Christian.
It's a legend. It's like
Some scary things happen there.
it's like the campfire story that everyone would tell
Can you tell the
on
story?
Halloween. It really wasn't that crazy. Like, I don't know what all the hype was about, but
She's been in there. I don't
Yeah.
know anyone else that has been in there besides her.
they have a bookstore, which was kind of the easiest point of entry, I guess. Yeah, I just went in and they had books from every religion next to each other, and they are all true according to them.
Interesting take,
Yeah.
which is impossible.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I think that there can be truth in multiple religions, but that doesn't mean that every religion is true. That makes sense.
Interesting. So would you say there's truth in Islam, but that points to Christ as the Messiah?
Sure.
Because
Like, I mean, sure. You can take some. You can always find something that's like similar, or
because most
you know?
religions don't argue that like Jesus didn't exist.
yeah, no, they regard him as a prophet, which is very strange because he did claim to be God. So, what do you do with that if you think he is worth all this respect and he's wise and all of this stuff?
Because in today's day and age, wouldn't he be considered a false prophet if he was claiming to be God and they don't believe
Yeah,
him?
absolutely. So it wouldn't make sense to give him any credibility at all.
So what was the argument that got, maybe not one singular argument, but what got you from atheism to is it agnosticism? What got you there?
I think it did ultimately start with the resurrection. Not to be cliche, but that was the easiest point, I think, because there's the most material on it. But I could not find a single atheist argument against it that dealt with the evidence. Every response I could find either didn't contend with it at all, or offered a very none of the other explanations were founded or had any more evidence than anything else. So that was the first frustration, I guess, because it was the same frustration I had with Christianity and with religion. So I was like, well, I can't just accept it over here and not over there. So so that kind of made me curious, I guess.
I do feel like you're an example of someone that looked at it on like a level playing field of, I'm just like looking for the truth here.
Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah. I really didn't, because also, honestly, what made me even more reluctant to Christianity and skeptical of it was its promises about making your life better. That pushed me further away from it, because I did not want whatever conclusion I found. I really didn't want it to just be because I was vulnerable or because I was desperate or because I needed meaning. I was perfectly at peace, accepting that like a meaningless reality that was okay with me if that's what was true. So I tried to maintain that perspective as I did my research. Yeah.
Was that a hard perspective to keep? Because I think most people, we've talked about this too, is a lot of people use religion as like a comfort mechanism and actually don't believe it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I still think that. I mean, psychology is true no matter what umbrella it's under, if that makes sense. So,
Expand on that.
like, you could say something is spiritual that has a psychological explanation. And then if you're in the secular world, it's the same principle, but you say it's psychology instead of spiritual. So, of course, like, we crave comfort, we crave community. Religion offers a lot of that. It offers explanation and purpose and meaning, which are all things that we gravitate towards. But it doesn't, like, science can't explain why we crave those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that desire doesn't go away no matter what religion you claim. So it didn't matter if it was Christianity or if it was a different, like, or if it was atheism, if that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Because it didn't change that reality of wanting things that often sometimes you can't have or you'll never be satisfied with. And so if you have that perspective, as I did, that nothing can make it better, then it doesn't really matter. Like, those parts of religion are not motivational for you. At least that's what I experienced.
Was there a time when you believed that if you were to die tomorrow, it would just go black?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was that hard to wrap your head around?
No.
You were okay
For
with
me-
that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I actually really enjoyed that thought. I still sometimes, like, obviously, well, I'm not a heretic, so don't get all excited, okay? But still, sometimes I think it would be easier if there was nothing else than what's here right now, and that the material world is all there is, and there's no underlying meaning to anything. But I think that also is just my temperament. I tend to be a more cynical person. It's easier for me to be a pessimist, you know? Whereas I think some people are more hopeful naturally. Mm-hmm. But no, I didn't mind the idea that there was nothing after this.
I think, too, with certain things, especially suffering, people either tend to go like the more cynical route, pessimistic, I hope it goes black because I'm suffering so much on this earth, or the hopeful route where you're kind of like Job, where you know that God exists, you know that he's real, and it's kind of getting to the finish line.
Yeah.
And you're like, the finish line is heaven and like eternity with Jesus. But sometimes it's easier to think, it would be easier to live because we wouldn't have to be as like moral.
No, 100%. And I mean, it would be an easier explanation that there is no explanation, I think, than to like know that there is one and you'll never know it fully. That's, at least for me, as someone who likes to know everything all the time.
Big intellect over here.
Yeah, I would prefer there just is nothing.
That's like, I think I probably would have had the same view if I've never been an atheist. I've always just been a Christian, but lukewarm, which I think is honestly sometimes even more dangerous than being an atheist because you're so comfortable in your sin and, there's the chance of you dying tomorrow and him being like, depart from me, I never knew you. And I think wrapping my head around, well, maybe I'll just ask this because I kind of lost my train of thought what I was going with that, but maybe I'll just ask, so once you got to being an agnostic, what's the timeline of that first?
The timeline?
Yeah.
I'd say maybe like 2 years.
Okay, so you're like at this Christian school going through this. Do people like hate on you for being an atheist while
They were very confused and a little bit scared, which is fine. I didn't talk, like I had my friends and that was kind of it. At my high school, I wasn't really the most social in the world.
Did your friends question your atheism?
Yeah, I was close with like some Catholic friends of mine, and we would like often get into it a little bit. Not like in like a lighthearted way, not a serious way. But I remember one time they were like, you should come to mass. And I was like, why would I do that? And they were like, we'll let you argue with the priest afterwards if you come. So I did, and it was fun. But
you argued with the priest after?
I did. Yeah.
How'd that go?
I wasn't satisfied, but it was fine.
Did it get you any closer to the agnostic argument?
I don't know, actually. I can't say for sure. But I think anytime I interacted with someone who knew more than I thought they would, like answered the question.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, okay. Like, I'll give credit where credit's due. Even if I have a bias, I'll be like, okay, that was better than I thought.
Yeah.
So I'll adjust. I'll adjust to it.
So you get to the agnostic argument. Okay, you're like, okay, there is something.
Yeah.
God, who's the correct God? What's the truth? Mm-hmm. You look at all these other religions. What did you find in Islam that didn't satisfy you?
Oh, well, Islam is just not... Oh, wait, can I say that? Am I gonna like...
I think, yes, you can say that. Because I do think, like we talked about, there is something where one of my best friends that I went to high school with, he is Muslim. I love him. He would probably do anything for me. I would do anything for him. But in my head, he's wrong. No, he's wrong. Sorry, not in my head. He is wrong.
Yeah.
I want him to know the truth. How do I show him the truth? I love him well. But also, I will stand firm in my beliefs and say, you're wrong. But I also need to know why you're wrong. And you've done the research, so you can speak to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll see what I can do. It's been a while since I really dove into Islam. But, yeah, I mean, there's just so much in terms of Muhammad, and you can just right off the bat see that there's so many things in it that are inconsistent. It's a very violent book. The Quran is actually very violent. If you see anyone on TikTok saying that It's a very peaceful religion. They are lying to you. I'm just saying that. That doesn't mean we hate all Muslims. There are many peaceful Muslims, and that's great. But the book itself is extremely violent. It has a history of violence. So does Christianity. I'm happy to talk about that as well. But I mean, Muhammad's youngest wife was 6. Women aren't allowed in the afterlife, by the way. It's only virgins that are awarded to the men, and that's their reward depending on how violent their death was or something. That's one element of it. I'm sure there's more depending on how rightly they lived. But there's just a lot. It really didn't take me long with that one. It was pretty clear. I think I got halfway through the Quran and did some research, and I was like, this is not a top contender for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of my experience with it.
Did you ever talk to anyone in Islam and like what their argument for it was, or was it more cultural? They were raised up in it and that's what they believe?
It's mostly cultural. Of course, you get some outliers that convert, but I'm not convinced that they've read the whole Quran. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but it's unusual, I would say. Even its history, like the reason it expanded so rapidly is because of violence. Like it was perpetuated through violent acts, and that wasn't because they took it out of context or anything like that. It was literally in the text and built into their doctrine that if you died a violent death, then it impacted how many virgins you were awarded in the afterlife. So there was an incentive to perpetuate violence, and obviously women don't have a choice. It's very dangerous in theocracies that are Muslim dominant, you know. They don't really have a choice to leave or to not. So there's a lot of coercive elements, I think, involved in that, at least in the radical side. Obviously there are Muslims, like I said, that are peaceful and don't participate in it that way. And that's, you know, we should obviously recognize that. But in terms of what the text actually says, it is quite a violent book.
Yeah, and if we're going off of the word of God, if that's their word of God in comparison to our word of God, which if your whole book is violent, but then there's no one living by your book, how does that work? You know what I mean? What's the correlation to that? And I don't know enough about it to truly speak to it, and I don't want to, you know, I'm always willing to ruffle feathers if I'm standing on my truth, but I also don't want to make a non-educated comment. Yeah. But I do think there has to be something to be said about, okay, if, you know, is it, you know, the Western Muslim is living one way and the Eastern Muslim is living the other way on the other side of the world in the Middle East. You look at the Catholic Church and they have the same sermon every Sunday, or, you know, the same, you know what I'm talking about? They have like the universal like sermon that they give kind of on like the same text. I think the Catholic Church is aligned in their sermons they give on Sundays or whatever it is. So there's something to be said about that too, of the inconsistencies, even in today's day and age. Because while we have inconsistencies in our denominations as Christians, our core belief is the same. So it's interesting that so many things happen in their book. But I guess I talked to different apologetics and like, yeah, you say that type of stuff to them and it's not convincing enough for them. And
but I don't think that's not why they believe what they believe. And it's actually fascinating because for some reason there are an unusual number of accounts of Muslims, even in other countries, coming to Christ through dreams and visions of Jesus, and they've never heard of Jesus, and that seems to be uniquely present in like Muslim to Christian conversion, which I don't have like an explanation. I just think it's an interesting pattern that seems to happen. I don't know what the reason for that is. I don't know if that's the only thing that would compel them differently. I don't know, but I think that it's meaningful in some way.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Because it also proves that our God is a God of miracles and he can come to you through dreams and visions.
Yeah. That was another thing that I had a hard time explaining was, you know, all these different spiritual accounts. And I obviously went to psychology and all these different studies and research. But still no one could really, and same thing with all the atheists like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris. I read all of them. I was very invested in their arguments and their thought process, but there wasn't a lot of counter arguments to spiritual encounters, if that makes sense. And if you're of the opinion that everything can be explained, then that's kind of an interesting hole in the logic.
And are most atheists, to be an atheist, do you have to be of the opinion that everything can be explained?
Well, I don't want to speak for every atheist.
For you?
But I think the underlying assumption is that ultimately, like, even if we aren't in a place as a society where science is so advanced it can explain everything, that there is a scientific explanation for everything. Like, there's nothing supernatural.
And we just haven't discovered the explanation?
Yeah. I think
was that their explanation for
that was my understanding when I was an atheist.
And when you were trying to wrap your head around like dreams, like God coming to people through dreams and visions, was that the conclusion is that we haven't discovered why people are seeing that?
I mean, it was difficult to find any response to it at all that was atheist, which I thought was interesting because I was like, if there's no weight to these claims, then why are we not discussing them and just proving them wrong? Yeah, so I think that also bothered me, and I was curious about that for sure.
And I guess maybe the last thing I'll say about like the whole atheist like argument, because I'm probably gonna chop this up into like multiple, because like we're like 35 minutes in type of thing, and is when you were forming from an atheist to an agnostic, was there, you said the resurrection was what got you to being an agnostic. What was it about the resurrection that only got you to agnosticism, not Christianity?
I think because it was just one example that happened to be Christian, but in general, it was more so just the lack of explanation or engagement on the atheist side with something from the religious side that bothered me. And I was like, well, what else are they not engaging with? So it didn't just have to be Christian. But, you know, like I said, any spiritual or supernatural account, for example, it doesn't have to be Christian, but there should be some atheist explanation or atheist response to it. And so that, I think, was the first thing because, you know, it doesn't, like I said, it didn't have to just be about Jesus. It was just the overall, like, sentiment, I guess, and logical whole.
And you were just looking for any type of truth that could then lead you down, like, the next pathway almost. Of like, okay, atheism, obviously not valid. Yeah. I'm at agnosticism. Yeah. Now. Bang. Episode 2 will be, I have some cool, I'm, like, loading up.